Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the chairman, Daryl Salceda, we'd like to welcome you to our webinar. I am Olivia Rios, Director of Operations and Programs at the Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce. As we mentioned at last week's webinar, the Los Angeles Latino Chamber of Commerce has partnered up with LA County Workforce Development Department. Today, we will be discussing employability business grants that is available for small and medium-sized businesses to get money for hiring people with disabilities. Okay. This hidden resource is super important, especially when many of our businesses need help in leveling up and growing their business. Before we start, remember to mute yourself.
Recording in progress.
This session is being recorded and will be available on demand by tomorrow afternoon. And with so much information, let's get started. Megan, take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan Davis. I work with the Department of Rehabilitation. I've been working with the Department of Rehabilitation for over 5 years now, and I've been working on our demand side employment initiative for the past 10 months. When I first came to Department of Rehabilitation, I was working in our blind field services unit. So I was working with procurement and invoicing, so I know who to poke into in accounting to make sure an invoice gets paid. But I am very excited to be here with you all today and share about the Employability Business Grant. So I'll go ahead and I'll start sharing the presentation, and then there will be time for a Q&A afterwards. So get those questions ready. All right. Perfect. So today we're going to be talking about the Demand Side Employment Initiative and specifically the Employability Business Grant. So I want to share a little bit with you about who's on our team with the Employability Business Grant. So for the Department of Rehabilitation, we have 3 executive sponsors. We have Jessica Grove, who's the Deputy Director of Vocational Rehabilitation Policy and Resources Division, Kim Rutledge, who's the Deputy Director of Legislation and Communications, and Sue Pelbath, who's the Deputy Director of Specialized Services Division. And then myself, Megan Davis, I'm the Demand Side Employment Grant Manager. So today, what we're going to be talking about, we're going to go over an introduction of the Department of Rehabilitation, just an overview. We're also going to talk about the Employability Business Grant and how to get involved. So first, let's talk a little bit about the Department of Rehabilitation, also called DOR. So services that DOR provides to individuals include counseling and guidance, career education and training, job search and placement, assistive technology, and some online tools as well. For employers and businesses, DOR provides assistance and support with hiring and recruitment, free disability etiquette training, worksite assessments, hiring and tax incentive information, and online recruitment tools. So I'll just say really quick, for that Q&A session, we will most certainly love for you to be asking questions verbally or putting them in the chat. But for right now, if you're not currently ready for that Q&A session, if you could put yourself on mute, that would be excellent. Thank you so much. If you're interested in more information about what DOR services have or how to get in contact, you can check out our website at www.dor.ca.gov. So let's talk about what is a disability. Well, a lot of the time when we think about disability, we think about disabilities that are visible. We think about someone who might be using a wheelchair or someone who's working with a guide dog if they're blind or low vision. Or you might see somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing using American Sign Language. But there are a lot of invisible disabilities as well, ones that we can't necessarily see. So someone who might be who might have rheumatoid arthritis or ADHD or has dyslexia. Maybe they have post-traumatic stress syndrome, or maybe they have anxiety or depression. When we're talking about individuals with disabilities, especially in relation to the Employability Business Grant, we're talking about a very broad definition of what is a disability. So the definition is a physical or mental condition that impacts one of the major activities of life. And when we're talking about disability, you know, we're not asking for you to, send a survey out to your current employees or to future employees to ask, okay, do you have a disability? And can you tell me what disability that is? We're not asking for that information. We're just asking for you to use your best judgment and to self-assess and report. And then on top of that, we know that some people may not be aware that they have a disability because they've just been living with the disability their entire lives. And they're like, this is just the way that I interact with the world. Or they may not want to disclose that information because sometimes there could be bias around that. So what is a disability is something, it's a very broad definition. I'd be happy to discuss more if anybody has any questions about that, but we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so there are 1.9 million Californians with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 64. And what that means is there are 1.9 individuals in California that are of work-ready age and would qualify as an individual with a disability. And why is this important? Well, there was a study done called Getting to Equal, the Disability Inclusion Advantage study, that found that companies that embrace best practices for employing and supporting more persons with disability in their workforce outperformed their peers. They found that on average, they had 28% higher revenue, 30% higher economic profit margins, and double the net income compared to their peers. In addition, they had staff turnover up to 30% lower. So now that we've talked about Californians with disabilities and how they're a valuable talent pool, let's talk about how we can access that talent pool. Well, that's where the Employability Business Grant comes in. The opportunity to grow and expand your business and therefore create employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. So I'm going to take a moment here to talk about what created the Employability Business Grant. So here, we're talking about the Demand Side Employment Initiative. And how did this come to be? Well, the Department of Rehabilitation, in conjunction with Department of Developmental Services, DDS, requested from the state legislature for $20 million. And what we wanted to do with that $20 million is provide support to businesses, especially small and medium-sized businesses in California, as a way to offset the impacts of COVID-19. As we know that the past 3 years for our small and medium-sized businesses, the economic playing field has been, the economic impacts have been very severe over the past 3 years. A lot of organizations needed to downsize, or some organizations, businesses had to close their doors. So we really wanted to make sure that we're providing economic support and relief to our California small and medium-sized businesses. So with that funding that we were awarded from the state legislature, and now with that money that we were awarded with the state legislature, half of that $20 million, $10 million has been utilized for the Demand Side Employment Initiative, or the DSEI, because we love our acronyms. So with that $10 million, we're looking to increase employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And by doing so, we're hoping that we can provide incentives for businesses to hire individuals with disabilities or provide that meaningful work experience. The DSEI consists of 4 key elements. The first one, which is the Employability Business Grant, which we're going to be talking about in depth today. The second is a targeted marketing campaign, which we'll touch on a little bit. The third element is for earn and learn opportunities. And the fourth one is for training for human resources professionals. So let's talk about the Employability Business Grant. That's why we're all here. So this is an opportunity to provide grants ranging from $20,000 to $200,000 for small and medium-sized businesses in California. So let's talk about that for a moment. When we're talking about small and medium-sized businesses, what does that mean? Well, we've decided that this funding is to support small and medium-sized businesses and does not qualify for large businesses. So with that definition, we took the IRS definition for what is a large business of having $10 million or more in assets. And so any organization, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, if you have less than $10 million in assets, you can qualify and apply for the Employability Business Grant. Now, if you're looking to determine whether you're a small or medium-sized business, We have some resources on our website, which I'll share with you in the next couple of slides. But you can check those resources, or you can also refer to the Small Business Administration or the Code of Federal Regulations to determine if you're a small or medium-sized business. And when we're doing that application process, we're just asking for you to self-report that size. But let's go focus in on the Employability Business Grant. So $20,000 to $200,000, and we're hoping for small and medium-sized California businesses to apply. Well, what are we going to do with that? Well, we're hoping that we can help businesses expand, recover from those COVID-19 impacts, and therefore, with that expansion, create job opportunities for individuals with disabilities. That way, our small and medium-sized employers can gain access to that valuable and diverse talent pool. Employability Business Grant, we have of that $10 million, we have earmarked over $5 million of that state legislation money for the Employability Business Grant specifically. The applications are available now, and funds are going to be dispersed through June 30th of 2024. Okay, so what are we asking for in return for that up to $200,000? Well, what we're asking is for one of two things. We're either asking that recipient businesses commit to employing individuals with disabilities, or provide a full-time or part-time ongoing internship for individuals with disabilities so that they can gain meaningful work experience. So, okay, I want to hire individuals with disabilities. I would love some of that grant funding up to $200,000. Well, what can I use it for? Let's talk about it. So the first opportunity would be for consulting services. We're not expecting our small businesses to be experts in disability inclusion. We're really trying to reach organizations that maybe haven't even hired an individual with a disability before, or aren't sure how to approach it. We want to support you on that venture. So the first option for funding is for consulting services. So that could be training for how to implement inclusive practices, such as job analysis, or writing inclusive job descriptions, or how to do interview strategies. Maybe you add a skills component to your interview process. It could also be identifying potential placement for employees with disabilities, or how to make your work site more accessible. The next opportunity is for equipment purchases and training. So first here, we want to make sure that you can buy equipment that can expand or support your business growth. You can also use this funding to acquire accessibility equipment, including hardware and software. But the main component here is that we want to be able to support you as you're growing your business. So let's say, for example, I own a screen printing business. I have one screen printer, and so I only have so much output that I can produce, which means I only have so much of a profit margin. I want to be able to hire on a new employee, but I can't support that with my current profits. Well, with the Employability Business Grant, you could buy, as an equipment, a second screen printer, and then you can increase your output, therefore increasing your profit margins, and now you can afford to hire a new employee to take orders, collect payments, ship out product, as well as part of this training, you can train them on that new equipment. You can train them how to use that screen printer and run that machine as well. So we really want to focus on what equipment can be purchased to help expand your business, and therefore, with that expansion, create job opportunities for individuals with disabilities. The next one is for new hire costs for individuals with disabilities. So this funding can support advertising for the position. So that could include Monster, LinkedIn, Indeed, the newspaper, a radio station, wherever you want to post that job posting. It could also include costs for onboarding. So that could include your staff time, or your time if you're the employer, going through and reviewing applications, conducting interviews, as well as your time going through and doing the new hire paperwork with that new hire. We can also cover the first month's wages, which can include benefits as well, so whether they're full-time or part-time. The biggest one in here is training. So as someone's new on board, when they get brought on board, they have to learn about your organization. They have to learn about their work duties, and sometimes they might require specific certifications. So for example, let's say I work in a bakery. I might need a food and health safety certification. Or let's say I want to work at a driving school as an instructor. Maybe I need to take defensive driver training. We can cover their salary, the new hire's salary, as they're going through that training process until they're able to work independently without that supervision. Additionally, we can provide funding for your staff time that's being redirected to train that new hire, because we know as we work to train somebody else, our normal outputs go down. And so we want to make sure that we support the businesses, the employers, as they're going through that new growth. So the next opportunity is training and learning programs. This is kind of like that ongoing part-time or full-time internship program that we talked about. The internships are really going to be designed by what makes sense for your business. So for example, if you wanted to make an internship program, you can determine the length of it. So it could be 8 weeks, it could be 4 months, it could be 6 months, 12 months. It's whatever makes sense for the industry standard that you're in, for someone to gain that meaningful work experience. And so this would be an opportunity for us to cover costs such as creating the training program, as well as the intern's salary as they run through that internship program. It could also be for costs that have to do with talent recruitment, and we can also cover your staff time that's being redirected to train and supervise the interns. The next option is physical location improvement. And this is really intended for those construction modifications on a building that make the workplace more accessible. So this could be modification to doors or passive travel, like installing a wheelchair ramp or installing push button door openers. It could also be setting up and installing flashing fire alarms. Or it could be other physical modifications, like we've had some businesses that were interested in remodeling their bathrooms so that they could be more ADA compliant. So there's some opportunity here. Okay, option 6. This is our last funding category. It's barrier removal. This is an opportunity to get creative and think outside of the box. We really want to think about here what barriers there are for individuals with disabilities and what we can do to remove those barriers, or what barriers exist within what barriers prevent you currently from employing individuals with disabilities at your workforce. So what we're talking about here is, like, for example, we had one business that was interested in, they have all of their employees wear a uniform. Everybody wears the same uniform, but the manufacturer for the uniforms didn't make a small enough uniform for the size that was needed for one of the employees. So the business wanted to have this funding support alterations for the uniform so that employee could wear the same uniform as everybody else. And then therefore it would decrease isolation and increase employment retention for that employee. This is also an opportunity, like to think about things that may not fit under the other categories. So for example, we had a business that was a multimedia organization, and they had, prior to the pandemic, multiple employees, as well as a commercial leasing space that they were using for their business. Well, with the impacts of COVID, they unfortunately had to close down their location and lay off their employees. Now with this funding initiative, they're looking at growing their business back again. They want to do new hire cost reimbursement to bring some new employees on board, and they want to use barrier removal to help support commercial leasing for the first 6 months. So that way they can gain that new space and have those new hires to support that space. So they're really growing back from the pandemic of being one person in their house working on all of those projects by themselves to growing their business back, growing that recovery, that impact with this funding so that they can gain that leasing space and hire new individuals with disabilities on their workforce. So it's a really exciting opportunity to think outside of the box and say, what can we do to help grow your business and support individuals with disabilities? So let's talk about key dates. So funding is available now. We have over $5 million that is available and that can be requested through this application process. So applications can be submitted now through December 31st of 2023, so a little less than a year from now, or until funding runs out. And this is a one-time appropriation of funds, which means that all of the funding needs to be spent by June 30th of 2024. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have our website, employabilityca.com. You can check out more information, and I'll touch a little bit more on that on the next slide. So what does the process look like to apply? So the first thing would be going to that website, our employabilityca.com website, and you can get all the information needed to apply. And what that means is the application's available. There's a sample application that you can see on there. We've provided resources that would be helpful for your organization as you go through this application process. And it also includes, for example, I talked about determining business size. We have links to the Code of Federal Regulations for how to determine your business size. There's also information about askjan.org, which is the job accommodation network, which helps you find information about how you can better support individuals with disabilities in the workforce. There's some really great information on our website. But once you get all the information that you need to apply and you get that application, applications can be submitted via email. You don't have to go to the post office. You don't have to print anything out. It can all be done online. Once your application is submitted, this is a state-funded opportunity, which means that we don't have a lot of the same restrictions that federal grant requirements do. And what does that mean? Well, this is available to be a collaborative process. So when you submit your application, I can look over it personally and I can work with you on any revisions or adjustments or tweaks. So for example, let's say, hey, can you provide a little bit more detail on this one line? Or, hey, I think this funding category makes sense to go in the barrier removal instead of, physical location improvement or something like that. We can make those modifications together. And then once we're confident that your application's ready to go, we're going to have our DSCI panelists review your application. Once they review the application, they're going to make a determination and we're going to send out notifications of award to business owners. Our panelists are actually working on reviewing applications right now, and we're hoping to continuously review and award funding as we move forward. So it's not like you have to wait until December 31st of 2023 to find out if you're going to be awarded grant funding. We're hoping to do this as we move along. And then once you're awarded that you're notified that you're going to be awarded funding, we start moving into that final contract process. And then once you're in contract, you'll be working with me directly. You can send me invoices as often as monthly, and I'll review and approve them, and I'll send them to our accounting section to get those paid. And then as we move through the process, there'll be grant recipients will be required to submit quarterly reports just to verify that they're verifying the funds that are being spent on the activities listed in the proposal, as well as that they're hiring individuals with disabilities or providing that meaningful work experience. So if the $200,000 wasn't sweet enough, as one of the second element that we're talking about with the demand side employment initiative, as an added bonus for all of our grant recipients, we're doing an additional marketing campaign to celebrate and highlight grant recipients. We've allocated $2 million in our contract to create this targeted marketing campaign to spotlight all of our grant recipients as champions for disability inclusion. We really want to do a campaign that highlights and promotes all of the good things that these employers are doing and the hard work that they're doing to make sure that their workforce is more diverse. And this is a completely added benefit to being a grant recipient. The cost doesn't even need to be included in the application. It's just something that will also be a benefit to you and your business. Okay, so I just want to stress here that we're here to help. You can email the DSCI inbox at dsci@dor.ca.gov. I'll also be providing my personal email address and phone number in the chat. Please reach out to me. We can set up a time to talk. We can work out things together. Once you submit your application, I'll be working with you directly so that I'll keep you updated on the status, or we can make any revisions if needed. I'll be your main point of contact. And I just want to make sure that you know that we're here to support you and hiring individuals with disabilities. So we want to make sure that we're providing wraparound support and services. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop here. If you're interested in checking out our website, you can scan the little QR code that's on the screen. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to spend listening to this presentation and joining us today. I'll go ahead and I'll pause here so that we can start that Q&A session. And I'm really looking forward to what questions you might have.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for the information. I couldn't write fast enough, but I did take pictures of some of the slides so that way I can review them. And I hope that our audience was able to fine tune where they could specifically take advantage of this program, because the workforce is really it's in need of help, and through this grant, I'm sure that everyone can ramp up. I know it's a cliche now, but ramp up their workforce, because we all need to get started. And the money comes with growing the business. And so I'll stop there, but let me go through the chat real quickly. I know I wrote down a couple of questions, but you addressed it. How many employees do they need to have? So you have an area where you can check to see what qualifies you as a small or a medium-sized business. And then Mary Thomas asked, does autism qualify as a disabled employee?
Yes, it does. Yeah, autism is one of the many disabilities that would qualify for this program.
Okay, and then let's see. Excellent. Megan can review the applications with you when they're submitted. That's really great, because sometimes, when we share our narrative, we think it's one scope, when actually it could just be modified slightly so that it can get approved. So having you as a resource, as a champion of small businesses, to make sure that our businesses do get the grants is really important. So thank you for that. Anna Salceda shared that would be helpful, so that so you can add where assistance is needed. And then does the business and the employee have to be located or live in LA County?
Ooh, great question. So the Employability Business Grant supports California employers statewide. So yes, most certainly qualifies for LA County employers and residents, but anywhere in the state of California would qualify. Any employers would qualify for this grant.
All right, so what about a business, and this is hypothetical, headquarters is in Bakersfield, but they have 5 other offices in different regions. So do they apply through the Bakersfield office as headquarters, or can each individual satellite office apply?
Great question. So the way that we've designated what qualifies as one business is the tax ID number. So if that business, like for example, we have had some business owners that have a nonprofit branch that has a separate tax ID number from their for-profit business. And since they're 2 different tax ID numbers, each entity could apply for their own separate funding. So for the business, the hypothetical business in Bakersfield, if each branch has its own different tax ID number, they could apply multiple times. But if they all share one tax ID number, they would qualify as one business.
Okay, thank you. And does anyone have any other questions they'd like to add to the chat box? I know we still have some time available, so take advantage. This is your opportunity to ask those questions.
I did see a question in the chat from you, Olivia. It says, if you get denied, can you reapply?
Reapply, that's the next one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we do send out a notification that your application has been denied funding, you can most certainly reapply. Most of the time we would be reaching out to say, hey, can you make a revision on this? And then we'd like to see this changed, or can you provide, like, hey, we really like this idea, but for example, let's say you want to add that transport opportunity to your business. You want to start transporting clients to and from your location, but the vehicle that you've requested is a convertible bug, and instead of like a more traditional transport vehicle like an SUV or a van or a sedan, something like that. It could be something where it's like you can apply and we say, hey, and by we, I mean the panelists, the DSCI panelists will review and say, hey, we really like this proposal. We want to see why the Volkswagen convertible bug was requested, and then those kinds of things. But if there is a denial, you could submit with another idea. You can say, hey, okay, that one wasn't approved, but let's see what else we can do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Now, if there was 5 key takeaways, what would they be?
5 key takeaways.
But
yeah.
because but there's so much information.
Right. I'm like, okay, one thing that I'll say, I think it's really important. I'll try to count 5, but one thing that
3 is good.
one thing that I think
kind of popped out, yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really important is that this grant funding between the $20,000 to $200,000 is based on your proposal. So it's not like you'll apply and then we determine how much to award you. If you make a proposal for $180,000 and that proposal makes sense and gets approved, you'll be approved for $180,000.
Nice.
The second key takeaway I would say is that the funding is available now, and I'm here personally to support you through this process. We don't expect you to be, like a wordsmith, or, as a small business, we're not expecting small businesses to have grant writers on staff to support this. I personally am here to support you on this process and will help you on your application. So we also when we were making the application, we really kept in mind that we're working with small businesses. And so we tried to make the application process as simple as possible. So don't let the application intimidate you. Reach out, ask me questions. I'm here to support.
Perfect. Number 3.
Number 3. Okay. We want you to be creative. So that barrier removal, if like I said, we've had businesses that were interested in commercial leasing. We've had businesses that were interested in having so there's a bakery where they have staff who are deaf or hard of hearing and they want to bring new staff on board. But as a barrier removal, they want to hire someone to come in and provide American Sign Language courses to all of their employees, so that all of the employees can communicate together and reduce that isolation, so they can increase the employment retention for the individuals with disabilities in their workforce. So they've requested the instructor course to be paid, as well as their staff time for their salaries while they're going through the training. So it's really an opportunity for you to use the tools or think about something that you've always wanted to do. And you can really make it your own with that barrier removal. You can really think outside of the box and say, okay, what have I always wanted to do? Or what would be really beneficial with some additional funding?
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. So let me look at the checkbox. There's let's see. Oh, we have a couple more questions. So there are 6 ways how the grant money can be used for. Can 100% of the grant money be used for one category? For example, hiring cost?
Yes, great question. So the funding categories can all be mixed and matched, but if you wanted to do all of your proposal request on new hire cost, you most certainly can.
All right, perfect. And then let's see, you provided your information. Another question from Cohen Foundation. where can we find employees that are disabled?
Great question. So DOR is here to support you. Oh boy, I'm already thinking of more takeaways, Olivia. Okay, so DOR is here to support you. So let's say you have a position that you're looking to hire. You can send me an email and, hey, Megan, I just posted this on Monster. Can you share this with your DOR staff? And I can take that posting and share it with our counselors in your area and say, okay, who do we have that's work ready, that is passionate about this opportunity, and that would be a good fit, and we can have them apply for those positions. In addition, one thing that I'll mention here is that because this grant funding is to support Californians with disabilities, so it does not mean that someone has to be receiving services from the Department of Rehabilitation in order to qualify as an individual with a disability. So for example, if you know, maybe you have a family friend who has a kid that's going through college, excuse me, a young adult going through college, and maybe they have dyslexia or ADHD, you could bring them on board through a work experience or a new hire, and they could qualify for the funding, even if they've never worked with DOR before.
Okay, perfect. Next question from David Fair. Do the grants apply to new hires, or can the funds be used for resources for current employees that have disabilities?
Great question. Yes. So the cool thing about equipment purchase is that it can be used to support current employees. However, we do still have the goal to bring on board a new hire or to create an internship program. So you may have to do that hand in hand, support your current employees while also seeing if you have expansion opportunities to bring at least one individual on board through an internship or as a part-time or full-time employee.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question, Melissa Tong. I wonder if you have any candidates that have experience in video editing and marketing and SEO. So would that be through the DOR?
Yeah, so I know that the DOR has a vast candidate pool with like immensely diverse employment opportunities. So I've had individuals that have been interested in starting their own business, or some people who want to do special effects makeup. I'm like, any kind of a career that you can think of, the Department of Rehabilitation is working with individuals currently or past DOR participants who have those skills. So my background isn't necessarily working with the individuals one-on-one for like our counselors do. But I can guarantee you that we have individuals that are passionate and able to work on those duties.
Okay. Thank you. We don't have a name, but it has iPhone. You mentioned submitting invoices. Are grant recipients required to pay upfront for expenses?
Great question. So I keep saying great question, but they are all good questions, and I'm very excited about the participation. So the invoices, this grant funding is anticipated to be a reimbursement. So there is some flexibility in that opportunity as well. And what I mean by that is, as you're providing services, like let's say you're bringing on a new hire, you'll have to pay that first month's salary and then submit an invoice for that. But there's some creativity in the equipment purchase. So let's say that you are in contract starting on February 1st. So maybe you're interested in buying some computers, or maybe you want to buy a vehicle, something like that. You can submit an invoice on at the end of February if you want, or mid-February, but then after that it would be on the same month. So let's just say you usually submit your invoice at the end of the month. So let's say February 28th, you usually send me an invoice. So that means maybe you wait until February 25th or February 26th to buy that equipment. So that way the turnaround time that you're waiting for those funds to be reimbursed, you're not waiting as long. And one thing that I will share is that I know our Department of Rehabilitation adheres to the California Prompt Payment Act. So I'm going to say the scary thing first, which is the California Prompt Payment Act means that you need to be paid within 45 days. So It does not take that long because
Mhm.
you're sending invoices directly to me. So when you send direct invoices directly to me, historically, those invoices have been processed within 30 days because it has to go to me and I approve it. And then it goes to our central office and then it goes to state controller's office to issue the check. So,
Okay, so I'm gonna get off the mark here. So if that being the case, is the program already funded? Or is the money trickling in quarterly, as earned? Mhm.
great question. So the Department of Rehabilitation has that money.
Okay.
That all of that $10 million has already been earmarked and allocated for the Department of Rehabilitation. The
All right.
trickling part would be that we're looking to reimburse the businesses as they move through what's listed in their proposal.
All right. Okay.
And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that you're being paid for what you actually pay. So for example, let's say that you want to do equipment purchase and you want to buy 10 laptops and some desks and a vehicle. So let's say you put aside $40,000 in your estimate for a vehicle and the actual cost comes in at $35,000. But oh dang, you better believe the batteries on those laptops got more expensive because there's a shortage. And so now the laptops are more expensive. So what we can do is make an amendment and say, okay, we'll take that $5,000 off of that estimated cost for the equipment for the vehicle that wasn't needed, and we'll apply it to the laptops. Because we don't want you to have to come out of pocket for the activities for this initiative. We want to support you in full.
All right. Next question from Blanche. I'm working on a product for people with disabilities. Can I apply for the grant?
Well, let's talk about it. I'm really curious about what the product is. So
Blanche, let me see if Blanche can come on. Blanche, are you still there? Carlos, can you give access or unmute?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
yes. Hi, Blanche.
Okay. Hi, Megan. Yeah, I received a patent in 2020 to work on a 5G technology product for people that have physical challenge disabilities that are in wheelchairs, walkers, and scooter chairs. And I did the SWOT analysis last summer with a college here in Southern California. So now I'm ready to move forward on the research and development and try to get it out on every wheelchair for safety. So the product, it's a cloud-based product with 5G technology. Anytime they're in a 5G infrastructure, it will announce to the driver in the vehicle that there is a wheelchair pedestrian or pedestrian with a walker within 125 feet of them, to let the driver know that there's a pedestrian in front of them, as well as the pedestrian know that there's a car coming. Because here in Southern California, we have them all over the place in their scooter chairs, going about their daily lives. So it's to keep from I witnessed so many accidents, and it's to keep the accidents from occurring.
Wonderful. Then I'm so glad to hear that you're being proactive in your community and being so creative and diligent to be inclusive and to create a technology. Wow, that's above my skill level. That's for sure. But I'm curious to know more. So as you're moving into this new phase to try to get this out, this product out to make sure that it's equipped on all wheelchairs or mobile devices, you could use some of this funding to support equipment costs, or maybe barrier removal for, kind of, I'm trying to think of what things might be needed for that process. But I mean, maybe you need commercial space, or maybe you need to lease out like a manufacturer to help get that product supported.
Yes.
If you're interested in hiring on staff, either part-time or full-time, you could use new hire cost reimbursement. Or if you're looking to provide some of that like software support or sales and marketing work experience, you could even create an internship program so that you can bring individuals on board and they could learn and help you as you go through this expansion process.
Okay, sounds great. I will email you, and we will discuss further in depth.
Excellent.
Great.
Yeah.
I'll go
Uh,
ahead and I'll put my email and phone number back in the chat just so it's fresh. Please go ahead, Olivia.
Okay, so we have a question from Eddie Sakaki. Hi, how does a person qualify as a disabled person?
Great question. So when we think about what is a disability, the broad definition that we're using is either a mental or physical condition that impacts one of the major activities of life. And that definition is very broad. It could be, like I mentioned earlier, it could be somebody who has ADHD or dyslexia. It could be somebody with anxiety or depression, rheumatoid arthritis. There are a number of different conditions that would qualify as a disability for the purposes of this funding. I know that that's kind of vague, while also, providing a definition. But if you're interested in specific questions, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you with some of those nuances, or if you have candidates that you think would be really great to bring on board, but you're not sure if they would qualify, let's talk about it.
Okay, all right, and we have a couple more questions, but I think you've answered this one. How is the funding dispersed once awarded? So that was on a payment basis, so you have to submit your reports, submit an invoice, and hopefully it'll get paid within like 15, 30, or 45 days maximum.
30 days, yeah.
Okay. Next question.
One thing I'll add on that, Olivia, I'll just jump in here. It is you would be paid with a paper check. I really hope that. Oh, I just realized my email has a comma in it instead of a period. I'll fix that. But I know that the state controller's office, I'm hoping that someday soon they switch to electronic processing of payments, but right now it is a hard check, hard copy check.
Alrighty. Next question, Angelica. Are you working with the local colleges and universities to bring on college students that are disabled?
Great question. It's really interesting. This is a perfect setup to talk about our HR training and collateral, which is our fourth element of the Demand Side Employment Initiative. We're working with the SHRM Foundation Society for Human Resource Management to create California-specific curriculum that's going to be implemented into a minimum of 3 community colleges. And what that is going to be, that training is going to be available for current HR professionals, individuals who are going through, with those community colleges for human resources degrees, as well as current supervisors and hiring managers. So that will be provided free of charge to California employers. And what that's going to do is provide support so that you can learn about disability inclusion, try to reduce the fear around, how to talk about disabilities in the workforce and how to address concerns. It's going to have real life scenarios. I'm really excited about that opportunity. But we are working with colleges to get that curriculum up and running, as well as I know that our DOR services, our counselors, are working specifically with high schools and colleges to get individuals working with Department of Rehabilitation to receive those vocational rehabilitation services. So long story short, yes, we are working with colleges to make sure that we get them the services that they need and the support so that they can find their meaningful employment.
We have Mickey. Hi, does post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, qualify as a disability?
Yes, most certainly, yes.
Next question, Angelica. Is there funding to provide equipment for employees such as computers, cell phone, etc.?
Yes, you could do laptops, you could do cell phones, you can do computer software, it could be a desk, it could be web cameras, anything that would be required of a supply for a new employee to be brought on board can be included in equipment purchase.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned submitting invoices. Are grant recipients required to pay upfront for expenses? I think you said yes, because there's a reimbursement process.
Yes, there is a reimbursement process.
All right. Tara's question. I sell medical equipment. That sounds amazing. Is there like a half question or? Tara, is Tara on? Oh, she's still on. Let me see. Okay, well, we'll move on to the next. We have Erica. I understand the list of disabilities is vast. What type of documentation is needed to confirm the hires are disabled?
Great question. So we're not asking for you to survey your current employees or to survey any of the new hires as they're coming on board. We're just asking for you to use your best assessment, your best judgment, and to self-report. So on those quarterly reports, you would say, hey, we hired an individual, and it says, was the individual that you hired an individual with a disability? And then you would say yes or no. And what the reason why is because that there are individuals who may not want to share that information because there can be bias around hiring individuals with disabilities. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, some individuals may not know. I was literally speaking with a woman last week who found out that she was diagnosed as dyslexic in her early 40s. So she had just been moving around through her life with making coping mechanisms, and so she wouldn't have ever known until somebody else pointed it out to her. So you may find that situation a lot with individuals that you're working with. Maybe they need more time and support in order to learn how to do tasks or duties, or maybe they need maybe they don't really want to do like some of those social activities might make them anxious, and so they would prefer not to join like the work parties, but they're very good in small groups or one-on-one, and they're excellent workers. So individuals may not even know what qualifies.
Okay, so if, for example, if I had my own company and I applied for the grant and now I'm reporting, so we self-report. I mentioned I hired 2 individuals with disability X and X, but I'm only self-reporting. So how does the program verify that I'm not in compliance, meaning I'm committing fraud because I hired my sister and brother, claim they're disabled or have a disability? So what are the reporting? What is the, I'm trying to find the right word. What are the mechanisms in place so that, to avoid fraud?
Great question. So a lot of this process involves trust, right? Mutual trust. So we're working with businesses and we're asking them to self-report as small or medium, or their business size, or as large, or to identify if they're working with individuals with disabilities. But in addition to, I'll be working closely with them. I'm hoping to even make site visits to come out and talk to the employers and see the great things that they're doing, and as well as that marketing campaign that we're going to be working with closely with employers to track and talk to, the good things that they're doing. And we're going to be working very closely with businesses. So yes, there is a trust component, and a lot of what we're asking for in return are commitment goals. But we will be working very closely, and that information would be, I think it would be hard to be fraudulent with the level of interactivity that we're going to be having with each business, each employer.
Okay, so and you mentioned goals. The small business or medium-sized business has to have a goal. So what is DOOR's goals? So you have this pocket of $5 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is there a goal of a number of businesses that you would like to help out, or is it all just dollar-based? Because there could be, everyone can apply for the 200,000. Not necessarily everyone's going to get it. Or there's businesses that are going to apply for a smaller grant. So is there a sweet spot of the number of businesses that you want to reach?
Great question. So right now it is dollar funding based. So we've earmarked over $5 million for this effort. We want to help as many organizations as we can. And our panelists are going to be going through and reviewing the applications to make sure that all of the information that's necessary is required. But in addition to, they're going to be talking about and looking at what are the impacts for individuals with disabilities and the financial feasibility of the requests. So as we move forward, what we might find is that some businesses, based on the proposal and plans that they want to do, we've had some that have applied for $200,000. We've also had other organizations who are like, hey, I just want to do some new hire costs. And so some of the applications have come in lower. I think the lowest one that we've received has been about $30,000. So there definitely is a variance in what we've seen for applications so far. So we do have, over $5 million that we're looking to award funding. So it really depends on how many applications are approved as we move forward. So it could be anywhere from the low end of 25 to over 250. And then I know that we've also been making conversations about providing, like, shifting some of the funds so that we have even more funding available for the Employability Business Grant as well.
All right, and I think we a couple more questions that just popped in. Isn't it illegal to ask an employee if they have a disability or not? If so, how are we supposed to find out?
Yeah, so we're not asking for you to survey your employees or any new hires to ask if they do have a disability. So if you're interested, we can talk about some of the trainings that DOR has. But we're asking organizations to use their best assessment and best judgment. You may also benefit from the consulting services to say, hey, you can bring some consultants on board for, disability inclusion hiring and training practices, and they may have some really good beneficial information for you as well. So there's definitely support in that process. We don't want you to feel like you're alone in that determination, but we're not asking you by any means to survey current or future staff.
Okay. Another question. What paperwork do you require to comply and submit an invoice for this grant?
Yeah, so the invoice is a very simple template that I can share with anyone who is interested. But the template is either a PDF or Word doc, and it's just one sheet of paper and then any supplemental receipts for things that you've purchased.
Alrighty. So I might have missed, but where do we go to apply? So will you be sharing the deck with us so that we could forward to those who participated in today's session? Okay, so Sharon, you'll get a copy of the deck and all the information's on the deck. And then if a business is awarded $30,000, can they reapply for more before the fund deadline?
Great question. So it was written into our application process that there is a possibility for businesses to gain additional funding. So if you do apply for funding and you're awarded funding and you go through and you complete all of the activities listed within that contract, and then that contract has ended, if there's still money available and if the application deadline hasn't passed, then you could apply for additional funding.
Alrighty, perfect. And I think that that's about it on all of our calls. So we have 2 more minutes. So Megan, I'd like to thank you for your wealth of knowledge. There's so many resources that are, not just local county, but state has. And it's important to share them with the community because at the end of the day, funding is what makes our businesses grow. And in this case, hiring someone with a disability is actually a really good thing. We need to help our brothers, our sisters, and just grow the economy and our workforce. So I thank you for that. And I look forward to receiving the copy of the deck. And then I'll move on to just closing today's program. We do have a couple of more webinar sessions coming up. Then if someone can populate the membership drive. Carlos and Jules. So our next webinar is called Demystifying Certification for DGS, LA County, and CPUC, which is the California Public Utilities. So our instructor and presenter and trainer is Jack Ochoa, who has over 20 years of experience in that field. He's our go-to person when it comes to certifying our small businesses. So he'll kind of describe the difference between all of them, how, the difference in between certifications, the paperwork, documentation, and whatnot. And if you are a member, you'll be asked to apply for the certification class that the chamber provides at no cost. So, there are requirements, so we will share more information at that time. And in the meantime, we also have a membership drive going on through the end of January. So it's $105 for membership, and that's for a general membership that's a value of $250. So what do you get for a general membership? So you get the opportunity to participate in chamber-only events, chamber-only webinars. If you are ready, then we also help you out with certification at no cost. You could be a VIP at our events and much more. So we really urge you to become a chamber member in the next couple of days. You could register. You could actually just scan the QR code on the screen. And if not, you could visit lalcc.org/join us. And then lastly, I believe we have one more webinar on February 8th. So here we go. So the next event or webinar is Equity Starts Here with the Fair Chance. So join us on February 8th as Stephanie Holloway, who is a senior program manager for the LA County Economic Departments, shows their commitment on how you can look for a pool of talent and give them a fair chance to be hired. So all that information is on our website. We want to thank you all for being with us today. We are your resource. We love you. Join us. And membership is, if you're in LA County, great. If you're in San Diego County, wherever you're joining us from, we have a wide reach because our resources and services go beyond LA County. So thank you, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.